All right, good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, I'd like to welcome you to another Coffee with the Curator. We took last month off, so we're back again. We're excited you're here, especially on a cold morning. Brisk morning. Glad you made it out to join us today. So my name is Brad. I'm the education manager here at the museum if you're new to the program. And we do this every month at 9 a.m. And we have a different presentation every month. So it's a fun thing to come out to, get some coffee and some refreshments. And our coffee is sponsored by Spice Merchant. And today's coffee is cinnamon hazelnut. They do donate 1 pound of coffee every month for this event. So if you haven't been out to the Spice Merchant, pay them a visit, get some delicious flavored coffee over there and teas and all that good stuff. So next month's Coffee with the Curator presentation will be by Jim Hoy of Emporia State University with the presentation entitled Kansas Legends and Folktales. And today we have Dr. Susan Crane-Laracuente of Newman University with the presentation entitled Back in Time with, I don't know my Roman numerals very well, so I'm just going to say, come here, the 1916 tabletop Victrola. So Susan Crane-Laracuente is an associate professor of English at Newman University who has taught courses in writing, the structure and history of English, world literature, and Latin. She earned a PhD in English with a focus on medieval literature in Old English and Latin in 2006 from Stony Brook University in New York. She continues to delight in artifacts from other times, including the Victrola she inherited from her father. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Susan Crane-Laracuente.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Okay, I will also be stepping over there periodically. So I hope you can hear me over there. I will attempt to use my teacher's voice. So I am Professor Susan Crane-Laracuente, but here I'm just your neighbor Susan with something that I really enjoy playing in my own home, as people did back in the day when these were a common tabletop, affordable, everyday suburbanite type model of record player. And I attempted to make a rhyme with that. So it's Back in Time with VV9, VV for Victor Victrola. And so who likes music? I'm hoping everyone's hands go up, maybe both of them. Yeah, this has been going on for as long as people have been able to play music, millennia, as we all know. And on what sorts of devices do you play your music usually these days? Right, our phones, things like, I'm hearing things like that. Sometimes the radio still, and we have stereos, we have all the things. Very accessible. We don't even think about it, do we? We don't have to go to a music hall performance in town or something to hear music. This is just, it's an everyday part of our lives now. And so, like I said, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just an aficionado. So just consider me your neighbor, Susan. I'm here to share with you an engineering marvel from 107 years ago, this particular one here. I'll give you a little history of the Victor Victrola phenomenon. And so this is from the early history of recorded sound, as again, some of you may know, some of you may even know more than I do. So we'll see if people want to say a few things after I finish my talk. And I want to listen to some of the music too. But anyway, 107 years ago, one of the devices from the early history of sound or recorded sound that made music vastly more accessible to everyday people like you and me every day. Behold, this is the Victor Victrola model VV9 from 1916. And so what came before this? Cylinders, as some of you also probably are aware. Sound was recorded, and Thomas Edison, as you know of him, often called the father of recorded sound, invented a gramophone or a phonograph in 1877. And so you see the device over there with the horn and the cylinders, which would have recorded music from somewhere between like 2 and 4 minutes, would be on one of these objects. So you see they're a little bit clunky, and so people they were commercialized, and so they were sold to the public, and people did collect them. And this overlapped with the discs that we're more familiar with, the disc shape, but the discs were easier ultimately to mass produce and sell. But what came before this too was this. And this is the phonograph gramophone, patented in 1857 by Edouard Léon Scott de Martinville in France. And this device recorded images from sounds which trace squiggles in a black soot coating a surface. So you can see that the surface was rolled over, and it was people would speak into that phone. And so there's an 1860 recording that was uncovered in, I believe it was 2008, and by modern technology, because he didn't make it to play it back. His interest was more in studying the sound pattern of voices and sounds on the piece of paper, say, that it was kind of engraved in. And so before 1925, recordings were made by an artist by singing or speaking into the horn. So you see, you could picture him speaking into that horn to record like that. And the voice vibrated the recording stylus, which cut, whatever was on the master, the wax. Sometimes it was wax too. Edison certainly did wax, and then he did other materials in his cylinders, which ultimately evolved from this. Or were invented separately and independently, and then they would be acoustic recordings is what they were called. So all mechanically done. And this is, I think, hopefully we can get to it, just so we hear the difference in the sound between the earliest known recording here that is extant from Edouard Léon Scott de Martinville, and then what we hear here. So you see the lyrics too, and maybe you can actually hear them. It's a French folk song. It's the first little lines, right? Au clair de la lune, by the light of the moon. So you'll hear him sort of singing Au clair de la lune, mon ami Pierrot prête-moi. So my friend Pierrot, give me. And let's see if we can play this so we can hear it. Ah, yes, the singing of the cell phone. That's modern music. Let's see. See if it will work. Okay. Did you make out any of the words? It's really fuzzy. You can kind of like, you kind of hear that part, I think, the most. But certainly the amazing thing is that this was rediscovered, and actually, he didn't intend for it to be played back, but modern technology allowed this to happen. And some scholars got involved, and they've been recovering these things. And so he's actually been dubbed the newer father of sound, recorded sound. So I think that's really an interesting thing. People have been, thinking and refining all along. So likewise, the playback came out of a horn. This is what people will think. When you often hear the word Victrola these days, we almost immediately picture something like this, right, with the horn. And this is a Victor Talking Machine Company retail postcard. Can you see the town and state at the bottom? Can anyone make this out? This is abbreviated. Someone raise your hand and say it loud. Can you see it? Deciphering. CHANUTE-KANS. Oh, yeah, Chanute, Kansas. This is the interior. You see Chapman's Place was apparently a retailer for this. They were all around the country. And so this is early on, even here in Kansas, certainly all over the country, all over Europe and other places too. It spread in vast popularity. So in 1877, we have Thomas Edison inventing the cylinder phonograph, and that evolved here. You see this turntable. And so what I want to do is look a little bit here at the person who really developed and ran the Victor Talking Machine Company for over a quarter century here, Eldridge Johnson. And he had a big hand in popularizing and refining a whole range of Victrolas, or Victor Talking Machines, as they were variably known. So back in the late 1880s, an entrepreneur named Emil Berliner invented a flat phonograph record. It was much easier to make copies, like I had said, than on the cylinders, and they could be pressed from a master disc. So Berliner asked a machine shop owner, Eldridge Johnson, to help him build a spring-wound motor, which is a mechanical type of a motor that he could put into the disc phonograph. And so there's lots of history here that I will not get into about patent infringements and litigation and, you know, people making different kinds of models of variable quality. And ultimately Berliner was forced out of the US market, and he sold the rights to Johnson in America, in Camden, New Jersey, and then he moved to Montreal, Canada, and he marketed from there. And meanwhile, Johnson here used Berliner's patents to develop his products as first the Consolidated Talking Machine Company, which he then reorganized as the Victor Talking Machine Company in 1901. And Johnson saw people's desire for on-demand music. You've heard that, that's a modern phrase, but we tie into that now. We really love that. We continue to crave that, I think. And so on-demand music of improved auditory quality, and he got to work. He was also a master of advertising. And so magazines, newspapers, celebrity endorsements, he got into all of that, and he marketed his machines as quality affordable. And also for high-end clients, you know, he would make custom cabinets. His factory could do a lot of different things. And so you also see this famous logo, which you saw on my first plate, on my first slide. These are the data plates that are inside the models, but you see this, you recognize this. I would imagine many of you do. This has become a worldwide symbol for this company, the Victor Talking Machine Company, and RCA Victor, which it later merged with and was bought out by, in a range of, well, anyway, we'll get to that. But so you see this dog listening to a phonograph, and this is what he preferred to, Johnson preferred to call his record players. He did not like the term gramophone. So that's why we've come to know these things as phonographs more than the earlier term gramophone. And Berliner had bought the rights to this image from a painter named Francis Barrade over in England. And so the dog, actually Nipper here, who's a little terrier mixed dog, belonged to Barrade, and he painted this originally with one of the cylinder machines, so Edison's cylinder machine, but then he made many images, and of course it was changed into the disc player here, and this is what was adopted as the symbol. And Nipper lived for 11 years old, and where he was buried is now a building, and he has a little memorial plate inside that building over in Britain. And so Johnson made real use of this. So I think it was by 1901, all of the products had this little logo on here, and it became a kind of symbol of quality. So you might say, okay, well, where's the sound horn here? There isn't one. You don't see one, right? But this is what happened. There were many improvements made for the sound over the years, because even the early models of the disc players had a lot of crackling noise and so forth. And these still have some, but a lot of things were done to the motor. That spring-wound motor became smoother and quieter. The way they would cut the discs became smoother and quieter. And then the amplification became better. So the horn, first it got bigger, and many thought it was ugly and it was a dust catcher and it would get easily knocked into. People gravitated away from the horns the minute that these models really came out. And so the horn is still there. It's just folded under. So that's the inner workings of what you see here. The horn is kind of reshaped under the turntable. So folded down and put into the cabinet here. Okay. And then also the lid. That was a nice innovation too, because you see in the earlier images, it was just kind of in the open air, again, easy to bang into. This was a little bit more helpful if you had children, you know, throwing a ball around in the house, or a cat, or anything like this, as we all know from living with small creatures. And even ourselves, right? You know, I'm like, I can certainly knock something over in any situation. So this evolved as well into large floor models. And so you see the similarity in the designs, but with some variation. And so here are a couple of these models. And the first Victrola, the Victor Victrola, that term was in August of 1906. So large floor cabinets that also offered record storage. I have a cabinet for this one, but it's a separate sort of aftermarket cabinet that it sits on top of that holds many of these records too. But these were very popular because you could just put everything into the cabinet and it was all kind of in one. And so by 1910, all of the models were called Victrolas. And in 1913, some were further innovated with electric motors. So it went from mechanical and some of them became electrical. And those were invented and sold as well. Can someone guess the name? It sounds like Victrola. Electrola, exactly, you know. Yes, Electrola. I'm like, oh, that's really neat. I love learning that. So Victrolas, Electrolas, you know, they were clever with the way that the sounds of even the names of these things would kind of ring out in public and stick. So by 1917, Victor Talking Machine Company made well over 500,000 Victrolas per year. So that's a lot, you know, even today, like that's quite a lot, but back then, certainly. And of course, this was interrupted by a whole range of events. So World War I rather, the Camden, New Jersey plant was converted to make rifles and plane wings for the war. And then afterwards had to kind of reestablish itself making these sorts of things. And by 1919, Eldridge Johnson was, by today's standards, a half billionaire at 37 million net worth, apparently. Yeah. And so there were lots of innovations and models of various designs and prices, from the custom deluxe for wealthy customers, and including that last one there, which was kind of the final innovation of mechanical sound production, which still sounds apparently very beautiful and, you know, better than these other models. But that was their last super deluxe model that they made there in 1925. But the whole range. And this is an average family model and a budget model. So 1910 saw the VV10, which predates the VV9. I don't know why, but this is apparently how it went sometimes, at $75. So $75, it's about $2,100 today. So people would save up to buy things like this. And very similarly, it looked quite a lot like the VV10, like the VV9 looked very similar, but it was priced at $50. So people gravitated towards this model. And about $1,400 in today's dollars. And it drew buyers away from the VV10, which ceased production in 1910 and transitioned to floor models. So this VV9 saw robust production and sales for over 13 years. And it was the 4th best-selling model of all time for the Victor company. And you can see why. It had this lovely domed top innovation. Beautiful. Easy to operate. You don't have to reach far down. That was a problem in the early models too. We had to reach far down into the cabinet to access, but not anymore. You turn the horn under. They got volume control. A lot of things. The motor is nice and quiet. And so it's also a beautifully made cabinet. You can come and feel it afterwards if you like. It's got nickel-plated hardware. Nice and shiny and lovely. Here. There arm. And it's got a 2-spring motor and an exhibition sound box. But why only 13 years? What happened? What started to happen around 1924? And you're gonna know, right? You replaced it. Exactly, radio. And so the Victor Talking Machine Company overproduced, and really, there are some hybrid models that incorporate dual things. Like today I have an actual replica radio, but it has a CD player, like there's a disc player in it, and these sorts of things. They tried, but ultimately the radio kind of won out. And of course, now we have other things, but ultimately radio and electrical recording and record players that we know, phonographs and more modern ones that are electrified overtake the original company. Better sound, also more variety. You can get news, you can move your dial, you can get whatever kinds of songs you want. And also no need to buy records when you have a radio. So that's what happened. And so in 1925, they tried to, with this model here, to resurge. They did a little bit, but there was a summer half price sale around the country at a lot of those retailers. And they were trying to sell off their overstock in the face of people buying radios. And retailers would host burn parties in their parking lots as trade-ins. So basically they give you this would be like a coupon. They give you a few dollars off a radio, and then you could go burn it in the parking lots. And the Victor Victrola did not really appreciate this, but that was what retailers did. And unfortunately, I think of all the beautiful wood that was burned, and I just think, oh, what a waste, right? But back then, this is how it was. And by 1927, Johnson sold the company to the investment holding company, J.W. Seligman, who in turn turns it over to RCA Victor. So Recording Corporation of America is the ultimate buyer of the label there. So despite all this, though, some of the Victrolas in their 78s have survived. The 78s, around a century later. So that's the records. Let's take a look at the records. Here, so engraved flat bits, as you can see, some of you have a few on your table. You're welcome to check and look at them. Here. And they hold a recorded sound. 1898 to the late 1950s is when they were made. In this way. And maybe a little bit later too. They were called 78 because that's the rotations per minute. Most ran at this speed by about 1910 and became kind of standardized. Before that, 72 to 86 RPM. Materials varied, so there was a kind of shellac resin. But the scarcity of this material during World War II had people turning to vinyl, which we know, of course, from later type records are 33s and 45s. Vinyl. And so the term 78 apparently developed only after World War II when other newer disc record formats emerged. Before that, they were just known as records or disc records to distinguish them from cylinders. And so production of these, you see the earlier ones are one-sided. There's nothing on this other side. This is an earlier recording. One-sided. We're used to two-sided in the later kinds of records that we have. So I have two one-sided if you want to come up with them here. And then later, two-sided, just like we have in our ordinary, well, now outdated vinyl records as well. So production mostly fades by the 1950s and continues on roughly into maybe the 1970s, mostly with children's recordings. And so after that, the electrical era. Electrical recordings where an artist sang or spoke into a microphone, as you know, and then there was an amplifier, which then cut a master. Yes, and then this permitted a wider range of sound. And then it was replaced, as you know, also by magnetic tape recording in 1947, and the micro recording in our later records, and then, as we all know today, digital recording. Okay, so now we have about half an hour. I would like to go back in time, maybe 9 here. Oh, okay. So let's just take some time now to hear some records, and I would like to play some. And if anyone would like to pick out a song from your table, I'm going to begin by playing this one here. Would somebody like to come up, maybe one of our younger participants? Like to work with this a little bit? I'd like to come up. Control the volume. Can I have a volunteer? Or anyone. Would someone like to come up? I'll come up. Okay. What else? Yeah. Okay, let's hear it. Are we ready? Okay, here we go. See if anyone recognizes this tune. My brother-in-law. Story of having one in your home or this one. Like, thanks for our. Good replacement boards, like needles and whatnot for that. Yeah. So, I think that they're still pretty common. I've had a bunch of needles for a long time, and so, here, the package is a little bit broken, but I have a lot of them. I've got another package at home, and they come with, I don't know how many, but maybe 50 to 100 per package. Okay. So, yeah, and then you know how long the. Oh, yeah, it varies. I think I would say. You can start to hear it, but I don't know. Does anyone else have a machine?
You get needles that have their baby.
What's that?
You can get needles that have their baby.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so now you know. Now you know the local source. Yeah. Needle. Bigger, and then you have little thing here. Would anyone like a song from their table? Or would you like to tell us a story? Do we have you can tell me that you put it on? A little bit, and then right. Adorable. Beautiful. Do speed adjustments. We're gonna have a vocal recording too, so you hear this instrumental, but also a big got a little break. You see, it squeaks like a car brake. Someone else from another table, would you like to play one of your records? Come on up, bring the record. Hey guys, I don't know what kind of company electric. It's like
And it didn't work. And love became a spot to its or its original glory. But you know,
That's a good question. I don't know here, but maybe, I don't know, have your TV, you're saying shells and needles. But maybe they do repairs as well. I don't know. This one, my father bought in California, so I didn't inherit it. He bought it. And I inherited it from them. It was not in the family for a long time. And so I don't know about what California is, but I'm sure there's probably someone. Maybe if you inquire at Henry or.
I'll have to ask my mom, but there's a guy at Hefner that's the collector. My dad had about 60 of them. I have 3 now,
Okay.
over 100,000 records.
Oh, wow.
He had,
Okay, so.
he passed. I'll get rid of it.
Oh,
His daughter. And got an option. Sold everything. He had over 500 antique radios. He was a repairer. That was his hobby. But there is a guy. It cannot be dead by now. Who's overall. Lincoln, I think it is. I don't know his name. I have to ask my mom. She might remember. I can find out and get back.
if you get back to the Indian staff and
I
maybe
think that Brad knows.
we'll talk after. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you. So I think when town's really want to repair, then this is the place to find out. Yeah.
He works here. I watch.
Okay. No, I know.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to say anything?
Put one on.
Oh, you did. I didn't even do this. Okay, if you want to go, you know what you're doing. That's
Well, I don't.
okay.
I'll let you do.
Okay.
I just.
Okay.
Silent night.
So what do we got? Silent night, like. Thinking when he was around like money, you know, and but he remembers as a boy, he tells the story of how his father took it theirs and put it down at the curb to throw it out. And on the record, yeah, so there's parallel here stories, a lot of people did that, or again, the burn party, the parking lot, like, oh, I can get, $2 off a radio or something, and that's a lot of what happened, that's why, even though it was a very common model, and that's an antique, it's not really worth out, this particular one. The earlier ones with the horn tend to work a bit more, from what I understand, or the deluxe model, something that's more unusual. But even so, this is still pretty unusual to have a working one, from what I understand today. So I'm glad to have it. We're looking at the town title over here. Anyone else? Or if anyone would like to know this phone?
I think that is theory as to why people's fascination is why it's coming back. Because there's another thing, any reaction. The other theory, why that might be.
I don't know, for me, it's like my father, sort of intergenerational kind of connection. But, I mean, also, I really love, like, the fact that we could make something sound that good, you don't feel like he's so tired of it. You can just so much way to control us.
But look at the top view then. I assume it's two separate units.
Yeah.
You have to look at the base, how they actually kind of would fit exactly the contours
Yeah,
of the bottom of the flare.
yeah.
Kind of like keep sliding off.
Yeah, some of the cabinets are like that. Mine is the flat top cabinet, it's not quite as beautiful as this, but that's not.
But at the bottom of your unit,
Yeah.
it's very similar.
That's the exact model, yeah. Exactly.
Where did you get that? Where?
My mom invited California years ago, so I don't know if it's somewhere as well as cabinets. So I don't know about like a particular theory also about why these are converted now, but I think probably becoming more rare as part of it too, and next to that, which is sort of general things you probably already thought, but I know you were saying just nostalgia. Yeah. Okay, we have more to play too.
They put it on already.
Oh, right. Are you getting so much? We're going to start the turntable start. You may want to do and attention. Yes. You guys are careful. See where it gets a little tighter, then you can slow down, then stop, then lead along with it. So down, see where it gets. Now it will follow. Down. Hold on.
Thank you.
Experts already. And then. That was called The Irish Have a Great Day Tonight.
Can you tell us anything about the one with like that's on your one? You know, but the one that's a lot of fun.
With my glasses on.
What kind of truck things now staff, like making, no, what model is on display back here? Oh, yeah.
And so if anyone wants to, you know, hang around for a little while, play another record, or yes, just. They know what to do. They're enjoying it. So you just like picture them back here. That's this lovely final picture. You know, children in the home playing. There, like it's back in the 19 or 1940s. Working on body control. All righty, folks, just while they're playing us out, I just want to do the quick. We do have a Senior Wednesday next month. It's going to be on March 1st. The presentation is called Railroaded, the Industry That Shaped Kansas by Leo Olivier. Leo is a former professor of history at Fort Hays State University. He is the author of a dozen books about some frontier military history, including Soldiers on the Savannah Trail, Santa Fe Trail, sorry, reading's hard this early in the morning, and 6 of the 8 fort histories of the Kansas Fort Network series. That will occur March 1st at 1:30 p.m. So be sure to mark your calendars for that. It's also sponsored by Humanities Kansas, so it's going to be a free admission. There won't be any charge to come on in. So get anybody you know, if they're interested in transportation, railroads, that kind of thing. It should be a really good presentation. Also, if anybody's interested, we do have our Mott Gala, the 20th anniversary celebration that we have coming up. There are save the dates up on that table by the elevator if you're interested at all. Tickets are going to go on sale for that here in about a month or so, probably. So just keep an ear out if you're interested in anything like that. But I'll let them keep playing. And if anybody else obviously wants to bring up a record to play, we'll get it shut down there. Thanks, guys.
What's the date of the next period?
The next Senior Wednesday is the March 1st, and then the next Coffee with the Curator is March 16th.
What time is the first?
It's going to be 1:30 to 2:30. Mhm. One-sided record by the singer, opera singer Enrico Caruso. There we go. You may have to bring these down. Feel how it's ready.